All right, it is Friday, so that means we're going to go down the NFL Week 8 injury report and what that means for your fantasy team. The big news for Week 8, of course, it is this guy, Tua Tagovailoa. Dolphins quarterback has cleared concussion protocol and will start this Sunday against the Cardinals. That is what head coach Mike McDaniel said, although on the official injury report, Tua is listed as questionable, but there is a sense that he is going to start against the Cardinals. Tua, remember, he's been out since suffering his third diagnosed concussion in 2 years back in Week 2. Here's a list of some other notable injuries to monitor for Week 8. Some big blows to the Carolinas offense there with Deontay Johnson and Adam Thielen. They are going to be out. Two top weapons for Bryce Young that are not going to be available. DK Metcalf, he is doubtful. Tyreek, questionable. T. Higgins, that's another big one for Cincinnati. In that offense, he is questionable. And Jonathan Taylor, he is off the injury report. We're going to discuss all of this and what it means for your fantasy team. And to do just that and go through the Week 8 injury report, we have Heath Cummings with us. There's a lot of big names, Heath, that we have to get to at every position. But, of course, we're going to start at the quarterback position. And, Heath, lucky for you, this is kind of like when I insert my own fantasy question here. It's right off the bat. It's easy. It's first. But let's talk about all the notable quarterback injuries. Of course, Derek Carr, doubtful. So does that mean we're going to see Spencer Rattler? Andy Dalton, doubtful. The big ones here, Jaden Daniels, questionable because of a rib injury, and then Tua Tagovailoa technically listed as questionable for that matchup against the Cardinals here, but head coach Mike McDaniel saying that he is going to play. Back to Jaden Daniels, though, that is a big one because he has been a top fantasy quarterback. So how do you handle that? What's going on with his injury? Here is what Jaden Daniels had to say himself about his injury and what's going on.
Do you expect to play Sunday?
Do I expect to play? I want to play, but not my decision.
What's the injury?
Something to my rib. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's something to that area right there.
How has it progressed throughout the week for you?
Like I said, I feel good. Been treatment, all that, trying to get back right and give myself a chance to go out there and be confident to play. And ultimately, the trainers and Adam and DQ that make the decision to let me play and stuff like that, they feel confident too.
What do you need to see from yourself to feel comfortable going out there?
My thing is just, I got 48 hours to see how I feel, and we'll just go from there.
All right, so Heath, we heard that from Jaden Daniels. He says, hey, I want to play, but it's not really up to me. If that is your starting quarterback in fantasy, and he has been just amazing if he is your fantasy quarterback for the most part, how do you handle that situation with Jaden Daniels?
So what you want to be able to do in this situation is wait up until the team actually announces whether he's going to play. This is a 425 game, so that's a little bit more difficult. You need to have a backup plan in place. We're not currently projecting Jaden Daniels to play in this game. So my top option to go add, just in case you need to start someone else, is Bo Nix. Also a late game, fantastic matchup against a terrible Carolina defense. Broncos have the 5th highest implied point total on the slate. If you go add Bo Nix, then you can wait until the last minute. Because if Jaden Daniels plays, he's in your starting lineup. You don't have to think about it at all. If Daniels is out, then you can just go ahead and play Bo Nix. The other thing I would say is if we're missing Jaden Daniels, I would be much more hesitant about starting Terry McLaurin. McLaurin's been a must-start wide receiver so far this year with Daniels. I would view him as more of a number 3 if he's catching passes from Marcus Mariota.
So Heath, before we move on to Tua, I did mention I was going to get my own personal fantasy question out of the way early on. I have Trevor Lawrence as my backup, but that's a 1 o'clock start on Sunday. So it's kind of like if I'm going to go with Trevor and not go grab a Bo Nix, that's what I'm stuck with. Is that a good move, or should I go try and get a Bo Nix or somebody else?
Yeah, I think, it just depends on how, everybody is aggressive with quarterbacks in your league. A lot of times, even on these 4 o'clock guys, we hear on Sunday morning, this guy's expected to play. And then you're probably safe just waiting it out for Jaden Daniels. Or maybe you hear he's ruled out. So if you prefer Trevor Lawrence to Bo Nix, maybe wait until Sunday morning, keep Lawrence on your roster. And then if we hear for sure that Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels is not playing, you can just start Trevor Lawrence. If it's going to be a true game time decision, then I would drop Lawrence, pick up Nix, and wait to the last minute.
All right, let's get back to Tua because on the injury report, he technically is listed as questionable, but with everything we're hearing from head coach Mike McDaniel, Tua is going to play. He's coming off the IR. He missed the last 4 games because of that concussion. If you have Tua and he's, and he's been on your IR, he's been on your bench, Are you starting him here? I guess it depends if you have a backup, but where are you at on Tua? Because he's kind of a fringe here when it comes to being, a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, and I think I might be the reason that he's a little bit lower. I'm a little bit more hesitant on his first game back, especially when it sounds like now Tyreek Hill's not 100%. There's no way I would want to start Tua if Tyreek Hill was not playing this game. We think Tyreek's going to play. We're pretty sure Tua's going to play. The big story here is really that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who have been complete non-starters for fantasy football, are back. They're both top 20 wide receivers. We're starting both of them. I would view Tua as a top 16-ish type fantasy quarterback. I'd still rather start Caleb Williams over him. I'd rather start Dak Prescott and Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, some names that you saw ranked around him. Not a must sit, not a must start. I'm hoping that I have a better option.
So Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill fantasy managers can feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that Tua more than likely will be there under center. All right, now we got to move on to the running backs because one of the biggest stories here, Heath, you see a bunch here. Brooks is doubtful, Bucky Irving questionable, ETN a game time decision. Jonathan Taylor, though, that is the big one. He is off the injury report. So if you have Jonathan Taylor, you're probably going to start him, Heath. But how does this impact just the Colts offense as a whole?
Well, I mean, it impacts Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson because they're probably going to be dropped in your fantasy football league. It impacts Jonathan Taylor's fantasy managers because they get to start him. You look at what he's done so far this season. We had some concerns about whether he'd score touchdowns with Anthony Richardson. He's got 4 of them in 4 games and was close to 20 fantasy points in most of those outings. So no doubt about it, must start running back for Jonathan Taylor. The rest of this team has just really been such a disappointment from a fantasy perspective, at least when Anthony Richardson's playing. I don't trust Richardson as a starter. He's a number 2 quarterback for me. And I can't trust Pittman or Downs when Richardson is in. So Taylor really the only start on this Colts offense.
And it's crazy when I think back to my draft, and most of them, AR was, maybe not one of the first, but at least top 5, top 7 quarterbacks to go off the board. So I guess anything can happen. Let's move to the wideouts because some of the most recent news here is coming out of Cincinnati. A big one because T. Higgins is questionable. This is a long list of injuries for the wideouts, so perhaps the most impacted position. We all know Debo was dealing with an illness. He is questionable. Juju is out there, but the big one, of course, is T. Higgins, and he is questionable. So what does this mean for a Jamar Chase? Is that more points for him, in your opinion? Adam, how do you handle it if you have T. Higgins or even if you have Jamar Chase on your team?
Yeah, I'm terrified of the T. Higgins situation just because we've seen this so many times over the last 3 seasons. We've seen him come into a game injured, play a couple of snaps, and then just have to leave. We've seen that midweek injury already once this season. That's what this is, and we generally feel much worse about those than the injuries that they come into the week with and they steadily get better. This one's gotten worse. And so I'm going to be very hesitant to start Higgins as anything more than a number 3 wide receiver. Thankfully, this is an early game, so you'll know if he's playing. If he's out, then Andre Yoshivas is someone you could consider again as a fantasy number 3 wide receiver. The tight ends maybe get more involved. And I'd be less interested in starting Joe Burrow if he doesn't have T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, no doubt about it, top 5 wide receiver, no matter who's playing.
All right, another big name on there that was doubtful is DK Metcalf. So what does that mean for JSN, Tyler Lockett? How do you handle that if you have those guys on your team?
Yeah, I think you view them both as borderline number 2 wide receivers. Certainly not sure things, and they've kind of gone back and forth in terms of which one's better on a weekly basis. I will have both of them ranked between wide receiver 20 and wide receiver 25. I'd expect somewhere between 6 and 8 targets for Lockett. JSN will see more targets, I would expect, but Lockett's just been so much more efficient with those targets. Plan on being fairly comfortable starting these guys as number 2 wide receivers. Certainly makes Geno Smith less attractive as a top 12 option.
All right, and finally, Heath, we got to talk about the tight ends. And this position in fantasy this season has just been rough up until this point. Getting a look at some notable tight end injuries. George Kittle, he is questionable, but a big one, Dallas Goedert, is out. So if you do have Dallas Goedert or if you do have George Kittle, I know in most of my leagues, Heath, I don't have a backup tight end per se. Who are some other maybe plug and play options that you could go and get if you do have Dallas Goedert or if you're, trying to wait it out with Kittle?
So obviously, Cade Otton was the big waiver wire add at tight end this week. If he's somehow still available in your league, that's the guy to go get and start him. Jonnu Smith would be my second favorite option. Hunter Henry, also a good option, but a bad matchup this week. And then if you're desperate, We are getting a tight end back from injury. It's Taysom Hill. He's better in non-PPR than he is in full PPR because he doesn't generally actually play tight end very often. But he is someone that you could start in a pinch this week.
All right, Heath, we certainly appreciate it going down the Week 8 injury report for us and, of course, answering my personal question because that's just what we do in fantasy segments. Thanks, Heath. We appreciate it. And, of course, you can hear Heath, JB Eisenberg, Dave, Richard, all the fellas on Fantasy Football Today. Right now in your feed, there are Starts and Sits NFC edition. You can download, follow, listen wherever you get your pods, or you can watch the show right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.